Let's take a look at the harmonic major scale. This is a scale that I have talked about before. There's quite a few YouTube videos on this topic. In this video, I want to take a look at this scale and I want to go over the modes. I don't think all of the modes are that relevant for us. As with any 7-note diatonic scale, you can create 7 different modes, but some of these are more relevant than others. Some of you are thinking, harmonic major, come on, is this really a thing? Do we need this? I think this scale is interesting and it's really worth looking into. And some of these modes are there are certain situations in jazz where you kind of need this scale, or it's a good idea to consider this scale. So we'll take a look at those situations, and we'll also try at later on in the video to apply these scales or some of these ideas to a tune. So let's get started, shall we? So the first mode I was playing there, or the first scale, is the harmonic major scale. You could also call it Ionian flat 6, I guess. So it's basically just a major scale with a flat 6. Or a minor 6, if you will. So you could play this over a C major to create a different kind of sound. Sometimes you might see this chord. It's like a C major 7 with a flat 6 and the 5th. So it's not really a sharp 5 in this case, because there's also a regular 5th. I think this is the chord they play or use in dolphin dance. So here this scale could be used. But it could also just be like a vamp, like I did in the beginning there. Let's say you have a C major 7 to F minor, maybe F minor 6. I played this chord, which is a D minor 7 flat 5, but it's also a F minor 6. This chord is the third inversion of F minor 6. So you can think of this voicing as 2 different things. So there, I can just play the scale. So it's a little bit dissonant if I play it on the C chord, but you could do it. It wants to resolve, but it could even stay there. You could also mix a regular major scale, use a regular major scale on the C major, and then this scale on the F minor. That's an A. To my ears, it kind of evokes the sound of the augmented scale, which is C, E flat, E, G, A flat, B. That's a symmetrical scale. I've talked about the augmented scale in previous videos as well. The only note that is different is that augmented scale has an E flat, but if you leave out the E flat, you can create kind of a similar sound. You could use those 2 scales to kind of create different sounds. And then the augmented scale. Of course, you should practice this scale just like you would with any other scale. Play intervals. Triads. chords. In the C major scale, or the major scale, you can't find a diminished chord. In harmonic minor you can, but not in major. So it's kind of like a note missing, which is the flat 6. Then you can... So from this scale you could use a diminished chord. You create a diminished chord. It's also interesting to note that the Bob scale contains this A flat. And as well as the Barry Harris system of major diminished. So sometimes when I hear jazz musicians use that A flat over a C major situation, I'm not sure if they're thinking harmonic major or if they're getting it from the Bob scale or the Barry Harris or whatever. But you hear this even in like early jazz. I hear Django Reinhardt play this note all the time. If you have, for example, like a 1-6-2-5 kind of rhythm changes, he'll play that note, or gypsy jazz players will play that note. That's a common lick in that style. Or sometimes I'll hear Django play something like, let me see. He'll often play like a diminished arpeggio on the C major and leading into like a C major. So again, I'm not sure where he's getting that note from. Maybe he's thinking like a dominant leading to the C. I remember thinking when you have that C major to an F minor chord, most people would say, well, play F Dorian on the F and play C major on the C. But to me, that's like, well, that's not really the best choice necessarily, because you want to maintain the notes from the key as much as possible. And if you're playing F Dorian over the F, you're getting a B flat, then E flat. Well, then maybe we should play F melodic minor. Yeah, but you still get that B flat, where's the B flat coming from? So now you have one more choice. You could play all those scales. Let's actually try it. I'm gonna play F Dorian on the F. So I'm just gonna play C to F minor triad. This happens in all kinds of music. So I'll play C major and then I'll play F Dorian. Let's try F melodic minor. Okay, it sounds pretty good. Let's try this one. C harmonic major. They all give you a different kind of feel. So if I think of that scale, I'm actually playing an F Lydian flat 3. If I start on F, that's like a Lydian scale with a flat 3. We'll come back to that scale actually. The second scale, or the second mode, would be Dorian flat 5. I think of it more like a Locrian scale with the natural 6, I guess. But I don't even think about that mode. I think of it as just from the root. So if you have, for example, a 2-5 to C major, but it's a minor 2-5, so D minor 7 flat 5, G7, C major 7. That's what I would use that mode over the D, but I'm not thinking like that. I'm thinking C harmonic major over the whole thing. So I'm gonna play C harmonic major over all those chords. But if I think about that scale, starting from the root of the different chords, I get that Dorian flat 5, I guess, over the D, and I get a Mixolydian flat 2. But I'm not thinking like that when I'm playing over those chords. I'm just thinking the same scale over all the chords. There's a lot of tunes that have this chord progression, like I Love You. I recently made a video about this tune in my Cole Porter series. It is actually not that chord in the original version, but that's what most people play. There are tons of tunes. You want to think about this though. This is going to be a little bit more advanced, but there is a difference if that major chord is a surprise or not. So if you're playing C major and this chord progression comes along, you expect this chord. But in some cases, the major chord is a surprise. Like in that tune, Star Eyes, the last 2-5, the major chord is a surprise. Then you maybe don't want to use this scale because you want to play over those first two chords as if it was in minor, because you don't want to spoil the surprise, if you know what I mean. So even if I don't think about Dorian flat 5 as a thing, it's still worth practicing that. Like, let's do the intervals, for example. Because you have to think. Like in all the keys and everything. That's a good idea to practice that stuff, because you develop your awareness of every interval, and your ears starting hearing the intervals that are kind of different. So if I start from the G, I get the Mixo flat 2, which is an interesting scale. Nobody talks about that scale. I remember in school they kind of teach you the Mixo flat 2, flat 6, and then the more unusual Mixo flat 6. And I remember thinking, well, what about the Mixo flat 2? I was like, no, that's not a thing. But you can totally use that. So this is actually the fifth mode, right? You can create this chord, a dominant, like a 13 with a flat 9. People always go to the symmetrical diminished. But now you have one more option. You can play this scale. That's kind of interesting. Another scale that is very interesting and important, I think, is the third mode, Phrygian flat 4, which is, I think, a good name for that scale. I have talked about this scale in my videos, for example, on Caravan, using different dominant scales over Caravan, and I'll link to these videos. So if I start from E and play a C harmonic major scale, I get this scale. So it's a dominant scale with a flat 2, flat 3, flat 4, which is also you can think of it as a major third. Fifth, flat 6, flat 7. It's like an altered scale, but instead of a flat 5, it's a regular fifth. This is what the Phrygian flat 4 sounds like. And this is the altered. So this you could use on any kind of altered chord, unless there's a flat 5, because then it clashes. So let's say I have like a vamp A minor to E7. E7 sharp 9. That's the altered scale. E altered. Now let's try the Phrygian flat 4. It's just one note different. Now I'll play a Phrygian dominant, which is the fifth mode of harmonic minor. That also works, even though it doesn't contain that G natural, but it still sounds good over that chord. If I want to play both those notes, the G and the G sharp, I'm thinking of a G sharp, not A flat in this context. It sounds like this. So Phrygian flat 4, Phrygian dominant, both G and G sharp, which is called Spanish Phrygian in some cases, eighth note scale. The real book calls this scale the Spanish Phrygian in that tune La Fiesta, and altered. Now you have different options to use over a situation like that. If you want to get really fancy, we can go back to this scale. The mixo flat 2. Remember I said it's kind of similar to a diminished scale. It's like a diminished, like a half whole, but without the B flat and the C natural instead of C sharp. And remember, anything symmetrical harmony, you can move up a minor third. So if I take this scale and move it up a minor third, right? So I could actually, if I want to be super fancy, use this scale over this vamp. It's like a dominant scale with the E is actually not in the scale, it's a major 7. So it's a bit outside, but since there was one note outside in the original scale I derived it from, if I move it up to third, every time I do it, some of the notes are going to be outside. It's just something to think about to create kind of more outside sounds. The next mode is a interesting scale. It's a Lydian scale. With a minor third. Very interesting sound. I don't know why people don't play this more. So you could play that over some kind of this chord. Like this is a F major 7. It's a diminished chord with the major 7. But there's another scale that you could derive from this, which also can be used over that chord, and that's the Lydian Augmented sharp 2. So if I start a C harmonic major from A flat, or the 6th degree, I get this scale. So if I have an A flat diminished, or could be an A flat diminished with the E. This is like the Django Reinhardt chord. Could be a major 7 in that chord too. The C sounds a bit funny. It's like an avoid note, I guess. There is a chord progression in jazz that we see all the time. This one, A minor 7 for example, G sharp or A flat diminished, G minor, C. So it's a flat 3 diminished. You see it in Body and Soul has that chord, All the Things You Are. And it's like a mystery, what do you play over that chord? It's funny because you study jazz and the book or the teacher will give you all the scales for every chord type except diminished chord. And then they'll give you a real book and yeah, play these tunes, and every tune has a diminished chord in it. And it's like, well, what do I play over that? Well, use the diminished scale, the half whole. Not really. That's kind of a symmetrical kind of scale. It's not a diatonic scale, you know what I mean? So you want to be a little bit more sophisticated than that. And here you have that option of using the Lydian Augmented sharp 2, which is a mouthful. I don't really think of that scale like that either. It's just like a diminished scale to me. So if I record that chord progression, it could also be an F major 7 over A, because the first chord is like the minor 3, flat 3, diminished 2, 5. So G minor 7, C. I would play F major over the first chord, or if you want to think of it as, I guess, Phrygian. And then Dorian here, of course, and Mixo. So I'm gonna think A flat Lydian Augmented sharp 2 for that diminished chord. So it has a 1, sharp 2, sharp 9, third, sharp 4, sharp 5, 6, 7. If I instead play a diminished scale, like the whole half, I get these notes. So first off, there's an 8-note scale. So I get 1, 2, flat 3, flat 4. No, sorry, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, sharp 5, 6. That sounds like this. As opposed to the previous one we looked. I could also do this. And play this scale. So that's a scale I learned from Pat LaBarbera. I think he thinks of it as an E altered. And then he adds a regular fifth. So E altered with an added regular fifth starting on G sharp or A flat. So that's a little bit too much to think, right? You can't, by the time you figured out where to derive these scales from, the chord is gone. So you need to kind of spend time with the diminished chord and different progressions like this and really kind of internalize that sound and those notes until you get it under your fingers. All right, let's try these scales over a tune. We're gonna do Blue and Green by Bill Evans. So I'm gonna play that B flat major 7 like this. This is an interesting chord. So it's like a B flat Lydian but with a minor third. And let's just try that. So here are the chords. Okay, so I was using over that A instead of playing alter, which that note is actually pretty funny. I was playing the, what is it called now? The Phrygian flat 4. So it's like an altered scale but with a regular fifth. And then for the F13, instead of playing the diminished scale of half whole, I was playing F mixo flat 2. I was even playing it for the C minor as well. And then the Lydian minor. And I was playing for the E7, I was also playing the Phrygian flat 4. So it gives you a different approach, which is always fresh to if you get tired of playing your altered stuff. So somebody who talks about these scales is George Russell in his famous book, The Lydian Chromatic of Tonal Organization, or something like that. Lydian Chromatic Concept of Tonal Organization, which is a book that I haven't talked about for different reasons. One, I don't have that book and it's very expensive if you find one. And also, I'm not an expert on that topic. It's a huge topic and there are some experts out there. But I find it fascinating. But he talks about these Lydian scales, the Lydian diminished, I think he calls it. And well, the theory is that the Lydian sound is actually the root. Instead of a major key, it should be the Lydian, should be like the home base. Because if you stack fifths, which the first interval you find in the overtone series after an octave, the first 7-note scale you get to is the Lydian. If I stack from F, that's a Lydian scale, right? So that's why he thinks that the F is like the point of gravity or whatever. So it's a little bit outside of my expertise. So that was my lesson on harmonic major, and you can check out my previous lesson on the same scale that I've talked about it before, and I'll put links to all these videos I mentioned and previous lessons and all that in the description below. So as always, big thank you. I want to thank you for your time and attention, and I shall see you next time.